Right. Good morning, everybody. I said I would do this, so this is a brief analysis of the stars of Elon Musk. A lot of you have asked me to look at his stars, so let's get started here. So what I'm going to do first is, as you could see the chart, or look for the first house. Um, Everything is backwards on this chart, but look for the first house. My cursor is right there. You're going to notice two planets and a rising. Now, we have Elon Musk as born June 28th, 1971, and I got a birth time of 6:30 a.m. in South Africa. Now, I got this off of Google, so the birth time, I do not know if it's accurate. I could still run a chart on someone without their birth time. However, after looking at his stars, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the birth time is pretty spot on. And the reason being is if you look at that A sitting in the first house, that is his ascendant. And that's exactly where we're going to start with his stars, because the ascendant or the rising sign is always the hidden face you show the world. So I always tell my students and my clients that when you're reading a horoscope, whether it's my horoscope, whether it's the one in the newspaper or anything, you always want to read both your sun sign and your rising, because you take on the traits of your rising. His is a Gemini ascendant. What does Gemini rule? Gemini rules communication, transportation, cars, automobiles, anything with wheels. It rules curiosity, things like that. So communication is one of his very strong talents, and he's a remarkable storyteller, and he can use he could tell a story and animate it with gestures and drama to get his point across. He does succeed in any career requiring intellectual agility, and this is very true. When you have a Gemini ascendant, just like Gemini sun, um, they fall in love with the mind. They not just the physical presence, but they need someone that has brains, that's captivating. Um, so he can succeed in any career requiring any kind of intellectual agility, such as science, such as an inventor. Makes sense. Tesla, hello, SpaceX. Um, One thing he has to be careful is not to choose an occupation that becomes routine and redundant. And Tesla is probably routine and redundant. It's the same thing, manufacturing. Um, what else can I say before I move on to the other planet in this house? Usually, Gemini risings are tall and slender and have long average arms and legs. They don't put on weight easily. Um, their chin is often pointed and their eyes are often wide set and alert. So if you look at Elon Musk's face, I would say not so much the chin, but the eyes are wide set apart and alert. This is an individual who has a tendency to be very busy towards mental activity, does probably suffers from insomnia in some ways, will stay up all night working on a car, working on a project. Um, he does need to get sleep, though. I mean, this is one of his downfalls right here. Otherwise, if he doesn't, he'll suffer accidents, especially to the shoulders, the arms, hands, and fingers, because that is ruled by Gemini, the phalanges. Okay, moving on. One more thing. There, he might have issues with the lungs and intestines, as these might be problem areas for him. Um, I know he smokes pot, but I don't think he smokes cigarettes, and most people with a Virgo moon will not be smoking cigarettes. So I don't think I have anything to worry about there, but he is kind of prone to respiratory infections, congestion, things like that. Now, In his, even though his right, or his moon, not moon, his sun is in Cancer, it is in the second house. Usually sun signs that sit in the second, not all the time, but this does generate a billionaire mantra in some ways. But his sun is in Cancer, but his first house is Gemini, and he does have a Saturn in the first house of Gemini, and he has a Mercury, no, excuse me, a Venus. So let's talk about the Venus real quick, because Venus, anytime you have Venus in the first, this is where someone has a very charming personality. Venus in the first house, especially if it's in Gemini, it gives you a natural gift of youth. People that have a Venus, or a Gemini Venus, a Gemini moon, a Gemini sun, a Gemini dragon head or tail, um, even hidden, a Gemini ascending or rising, these individuals will always have a gift of youth. So he will not age very much, or he'll always look fairly young because of his star placements. Now I'm just going to scroll down here to the first house. Venus and Gemini, they're usually charming and witty and have a smooth way with words. Um, this placement does filter their emotions through their own mind, and he can stand back in a situation and look at it objectively. This is where the love nature consistently changes, or they constantly change their minds, and they can be very predictable in the areas of love. Hence why he's probably had so many um, marriages, or I think he's been married, what, 3 or 4 times? Now, like I said, Venus in the first house, this is a natural charmer, a magnetic personality. He knows how to win people over. Um, and it does give the individual a gift of youth in some ways. Moving on to the other planet, he has Saturn in Gemini. And when you have Saturn in Gemini in the first house, this can create a child who seemed somewhat older than his age when he was a kid. Um, he might have to have taken on some adult responsibilities as a child. Um, might have had to encounter some hardship in life, and throughout this adversity, he discovered his own self-worth. Downfall here with Saturn in the first is a tendency to become very pessimistic, and this is where depression can set in difficult times. So what I'm going to say right now is, just because he took over Twitter and it's turned into a real shit show, there is some depression setting in there. You're not going to see it because he's not going to show it. But also, like I said, Saturn in Gemini also can represent childhood illnesses that he's overcome. I know he has, oh God, what's it called? Asperger's syndrome? Asperger's? Is that what it's called? I do want feedback on this. So, because I don't know the in and outs of Elon Musk's life per se. So this does create childhood illness that he's overcome. Um, Anytime you have Saturn in the first, this does create an individual who's going to be very reserved and serious. Downfall to this is pessimism and depression. So moving on. Now we have a Venus. I talked about Venus already. Natural gift for youth. Moving on to the second house, he has the sun in Cancer, and he has a Mercury in Cancer. So how do I put this? Even though he invests in technology, which makes perfect sense, um, it wouldn't hurt for him to invest in the world of Cancer. What does Cancer rule? Well, Cancer rules real estate. Cancer rules hospitality, hotel, motel. So investing in something like that, which he may already have done and hasn't told anybody. Um, Let me go to the second house. Bear with me. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Anytime we have a Mercury in Cancer, this is um, where he cares deeply for family and especially his mom. I know he has a very good and close relationship with her. Okay, here we go. So, anytime you have Mercury in Cancer, let's talk about Mercury before we get to the Sun. This is an intuitive mind that can pick up on other people's feelings physically. Um, they are very sympathetic to the needs of others. However, because of his Virgo moon, this will cloud things for him. And also, his ascendant, which is Gemini, let's go back to the first, is in critical degrees, meaning there will be challenges with that placement on his first. But on his second, how do I put this? He can be extremely sensitive to the world around him, but he is very creative and channeled through art and other creative activities. It's not just science and technology. There's an artist deep down in there somewhere. Um, but it is difficult. This is an individual who makes decisions on emotions because your Mercury is your mind and your thought process. Cancer rules emotions, it rules the fourth house. So he makes a lot of decisions through his emotions. Now, when you have the moon, or not the moon, excuse me, when you have the sun in the second house, moving on to the sun, um, this is where material security is going to be very important to the individual. I don't care what sign it's in. Sun in the second house always represents material security is important to the individual. The individual does like finer things in life. And this can also be where the individual collects things like, or has a hobby in things of value, like collects vintage cars, vintage artwork, fine jewelry, coins, things like that. Now, in his love life, he seeks a partner who's faithful and loyal. He does like to be spoiled. Since he is the billionaire, I know that billionaires, they buy their girlfriends and their wives presents, but he does like to be spoiled as well. Okay. Um, his ideal partner will be someone that lavishes him with love, loyalty, and affection. That's what he is looking for. Let's see. What else can I say about this? Now let's move to the sun. Sun in Cancer, these are known as moon children. Now, even though he's born in the constellation of Gemini, meaning June, he is still a sun sign. Okay. Or not a sun sign. He's still a Cancer water sign, meaning that his mood his moods are fluctuating. He makes decisions with the fluctuations of his moon. These are the natural born moon children of the zodiac. And he crabby moody, the crab Cancer, yes, he can display these traits of crabbiness, especially in his work life with his business. And we'll get into that in a minute. He has a strong need for security, and Cancer sons usually do. And a comfortable home environment is of the utmost importance to him. Um, the security he seeks can be found in the knowledge um, that he feels is he needs to be unconditionally loved. Does this make any sense? He knows how to use his resources wisely, knowing not to waste not, want not. Um, like other water signs, though, Cancer can be manipulative. I always talk about this with my students and my clients that every sun sign, every placement in the zodiac has its positive and negatives. Sun in Cancer, Sun in Capricorn, Sun in Leo, positive and negatives. Every trait, there is no perfect sign. Um, he also likes to surround himself with mementos of days gone by. But like I said, they can be manipulative. um, how do I put this? He never goes directly for something or someone that he wants, but once he has it, he will never let it go. Um, Cancer can exercise artful control of feelings, his or her own, for those of others. So there's a chameleon aspect there, meaning he can change to fit a situation. But this can also create where he can become emotionally vulnerable by doing this. So he needs to be careful. His love can be smothering. So maybe that's why some of his relationships have not worked out in the past. Now, physically, cancers are more vulnerable to injuries in the chest region, the head, the face, the knees, and the skin. Now, other trouble spots are the stomach, the digestive system, kidneys, and bladder. A strong sense of optimism will do wonders for their health. And in his case, because he has a Virgo moon, I keep talking about this, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. This is his downfall, is his Virgo moon. Okay. Moving on to his third house. He has a dragon's tail sitting there in Leo in the third house. The third house is the house of, if the first house is the soul's purpose and the second house is wealth and money, the third house is the house of mental clarity, communication, transportation. So in reality, what he's doing with his life right now is not, making, I think he's sick of dealing with the Tesla thing. I think he wants to focus more on space and stuff like that. But this is one of his creations. Anytime you have a Leo dragon's tail, even though he's a billionaire in this life, his past life, um, he was of some sort of royalty of some sort, a king, a queen, uh, a bishop, not a bishop, what are they called? A count, something like that. It was of royal blood, and he was a warrior in a past life. He was a fighter, and his people adored him. So there was wealth in his past life, and he was born right on into wealth again in this life. Now, the mental clarity here can be 50-50. And what I mean by that is when we have a tail sitting on our third, I do believe he does suffer from some sort of depression. It might even be where he has it treated. Um, you know, what I mean by that is manic depression. That can be treated with medication. He might be taking some sort of medication to treat that. That's a possibility. Um, Third, when you have the tail in the third house, this can be where mental clarity sometimes is not on point and it can be erratic, especially with the fluctuations of the moon. But moving on to the fourth, because the fourth house is the house of home, family, and security. And in this home, he becomes a Virgo, a picky, fussy, perfectionist Virgo. So this is an individual that is not easy to live with. Okay. This is a person that is constantly criticizing and picking on the individual, not realizing that nobody's perfect, not even him. Okay. Let's get into his moon real quick here. So, one thing Elon Musk is going to be lacking in his life because he has this picky, fussy Virgo, but because of his Cancer Sun energy, he needs at least plants. There needs to be a lot of feng shui in his home with plants. There needs to be a lot of greenery. If he doesn't have that, the energies in his own home aren't going to ebb and flow. But also, because of the Virgo moon stationed in his fourth, he probably doesn't like animals or the hair or the fur, the fuzz that comes with them. But what he doesn't realize is that that's probably one things he could use to remedy some of his depression is contact with an animal, cat, dog, something like that. Now, a moon in Virgo, they're very conscious about keeping fit, both physically and mentally. Um, they can even become obsessed with it, sometimes overdoing it in exercise routines. Um, and that could create an obsession. Now, mentally, Virgo moons love to criticize and analyze everything. And I think with him, it gets to the point where, I mean, he's not the easiest of bosses. You've seen what he's said to his employees at Twitter. And let's face it, he's kind of an asshole. you know, he's a Virgo moon, so he's critical and he analyzes everything and everybody. But what Elon forgets is nobody's perfect, not even Elon. Um, this placement not only expresses their own opinions, but also criticizes others' opinions as well, and sometimes incredibly harshly. Okay. And I say that because he's also got Pluto sitting there in the fourth. We'll talk about that in a minute. When he expresses his opinions, sometimes they come out like self mindedness or bigotry in some way. There is a bigotry placement here in some way. They also enjoy taking part in local and even national political and social issues. I know he's stuck his nose in some things politically. I think there, last I heard, he was being investigated under the Logan Act or something. I don't know how true that is, so don't quote me. But Virgo moons do make good, stable business decisions. They're good business partners and they're willing to work hard towards their goals. Now, because he has this placement, this creates the workaholic. So I do know that he sleeps on the floor of his office or on a cot. He is a workaholic and he really does need to live a little, let go. He will suffer in silence. And that's one of the downfalls to having a Virgo moon is they will suffer in silence instead of speaking up. And when you suffer in silence, it only, what it does is it creates bitterness in a relationship, whether that's business, professional, or personal. And then they feel like they're a martyr. Now, a moon in the fourth house means they're strongly attached to their home and their family and probably have a close relationship with their mother, which he does. Harmony at home ensures a good emotional security for him because he can't have, that's where he has to have his peace. It's not in his workplace, it's at his home. If he cannot have a peacefulness within his home, he's off balance, he's off kilter, and it can be very disruptive for him. He feels secure and can be very sensitive to others' feelings and good at cheering up an old friend. But he does need to learn to control his wild mood swings, especially since um, within the home it does undergo some major fluctuations of energy. And like I said, he probably hates animals, or not hates them, but doesn't like the dirt and the fuzz that comes with them. But if it's the one thing he really needs to regenerate his soul and his spirit, it is the contact and the touch of an animal, a cat purring, a dog barking, or just that animal contact. Not everybody understands this, especially my Virgo moons. I've explained this a lot to Virgo moons. All right, we covered that. Now, Pluto. He does have Pluto in the fourth, and Pluto is the um, generation planet. And Pluto in Virgo is all about conforming to holistic things and things like that. This is where no smoking in restaurants came from. This is the generation that is about health and cleanliness and holistic medicine and diets. This is the generation that created all of this. And let me go to my notes here on my computer. Bear with me. Let me scroll down here. And I hope things aren't too noisy in the background. Like I said, I have a whole bunch of cats and it's been kind of crazy. Okay, scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Bear with me. Okay, so Pluto and Virgo, this is my generation too. This is a Gen X thing, and this is where we saw the birth of social reform, such as free medical clinics and food banks. Um, in some ways, chemicals also became more popular. Many miracle drugs were discovered with this generation. Pluto and Virgo runs from about 1956 to about 1972. And so part of this generation is Gen X, and part of this generation is Boomer, right on the cusp. Um, I, I'll talk about that another day. But Pluto in the fourth, this is where one of his parents, probably his mom, had a tremendous impact on his life. We talk about the mom once again, having the moon there as well. Him and his mom are probably like the best of friends. Now his Pluto, let me see if his Pluto is not afflicted. So um, he might not have gotten along with his dad quite as much as he did his mom, because his mom was able to establish a loving and nurturing home environment for him. So he has a very closeness with his mom. Okay, moving on over to the fifth house. The fifth house is the house of love, romance, children, creativity. So anytime you have Uranus sitting there, now he also has Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is in Libra, so this can explain he might be cursed with marriage in some way. This is the curse in some way, but it's also the shadow self. I know a lot of astrologers say that Black Moon Lilith can be the curse, but we learn from our curses and we overcome them. So I always call it, in the realm of witchcraft and witchery, it's the shadow side, it's the shadow self. We can overcome this placement. But he's probably not aware of that. His is in the fifth. This explains why he has gone through a lot of marriages. I'm not going to focus too much on Black Moon Lilith. I am going to focus on Uranus in Libra. Air on air. Okay. So this is where there is can be erratic behavior within the realm of love. This is also where he can have children that are very unusual, peculiar children. There's nothing wrong with that. That just represents that they'll be unique and maybe even rebellious. Um, his children need positive channels to express their individuality. This placement also represents unexpected windfalls and inheritances. Um, when you have Uranus and Libra, Uranus is an air planet. Libra is an air sign. It's very simpatico together. Creates a charming and cooperative personality. They do seek peace and harmony in their life, but the one thing, having Uranus there in the fifth, they need freedom. They don't need a partner who's very smothering. Even though he's Cancer, Cancers have a tendency to be smothering. Not all Cancers. What he has to do is give as he expects something out of his relationship. He has to give the same to the other individual. Um, his challenge with this placement is he has to be more flexible within his relationships. It can't be one-sided. This is a highly creative individual who has hobbies and interests that are unique and unconventional. So he needs to be strong. He's very independent, and sometimes he's difficult to understand, even with his love partners. So that independence, he needs that independence. Now, moving on to the sixth house, and in the sixth house, he becomes a Scorpio. And where is the universal dragon's tail right now? Well, it is on Scorpio. Now, yes, he is born in the sun sign of Cancer, and Cancer is being affected by their fifth house. But because he is a cusp baby, as I call it, and cusp babies will take on two energies, he's going to be dealing with the dragon's tail in the fifth and the sixth, but I'm seeing it more in his sixth, because this is his health and his service to the world. Now, he has Jupiter sitting there. Jupiter and Scorpio will always protect in some ways, and I actually have this placement too. hence why Jupiter Scorpio rules witchcraft, and I have quite a gift for that. But anytime you have Jupiter and Scorpio sitting right there in the sixth, this is going to be someone who has a flair for finances and management of resources of others. He can, I don't think he's tuned in or tapped into his um, metaphysical abilities, but he has a way of some healing abilities within him. People are attracted to him by his magnetic personality and also his deep inner strengths that he has. Jupiter in Scorpio always represents some benefits from inheritance. This is a hardworking, efficient, and resourceful individual. This is also where sex is very important to the person. Um, when you have Jupiter in the sixth, you gain satisfaction through helping others in some way. But the downfall here is his tendency is to become a workaholic. If he continues on this path, his health will take a toll, because generally Scorpio and Jupiter, this is an individual that will enjoy good health. He's got Jupiter sitting on his health and service to the world. As long as he does not overindulge in food and drink, gets plenty of rest, sleeps, rests, takes time to smell the roses. Um, his job may bring him to faraway lands, and he may work with foreigners, which he has. Now, with the tail being in the sixth house, this is the service to the world. There are always wake-up calls with Scorpio dragon's tails. And with this universal dragon sitting in his sixth, there's been some things that have been exposed about him in the last week, about his degree and his education and how it's not really what it claims to be. One thing about Scorpio, if you lie, if you manipulate, if you fudge things, eventually it will catch up with you when this dragon tail comes to light. And this is a wake-up call for all of us, including Mr. Elon Musk. Not even his money can hide the truth. This sign is looking and hunting for truth. That's Jupiter in the sixth. Now, I'm not going to cover a whole lot more here. I am going to jump on over to his ninth house, because that's where his dragon's head is. And his dragon's head is in Aquarius. It makes absolute sense. A dragon's head in Aquarius. This rules New Age. This is UFOs. This is space. This is rocket ships. Ninth house is the house of knowledge, laws, justice, foreigners, foreign lands. He was originally from South Africa. He's come to the United States and he's made his fortune here. Let me scroll to my notes. Bear with me. He also has a Mars sitting there as well. And anytime you have Mars in Aquarius, these two are very simpatico together in some ways. But first, let's talk about the North Node in Aquarius. This is someone who's extremely self-confident and optimistic. During many lifetimes, he's occupied a position of success in society. I told you what his past life was. Perhaps being a member of royalty. During this lifetime, his lesson here is to learn to put aside his substantial ego and to consider the needs of the larger society in which he's a member of. He's no longer a king, though he's a billionaire and you may think he is king. In order to achieve his happiness, he must be motivated by a desire to bring about humanitarian change, rather than a desire for personal praise. So in this lifetime, it's about, what does Aquarius rule? Besides ETs, UFOs, space, astrology, it rules humanitarianism. So he needs to think more like a humanitarian rather than a billionaire who wants praise. That will be his greatest success, but sometimes the love of money and the love of power is more powerful than the power of love. I heard that last night on a video I was watching. Now, the North Node in the ninth, he probably in a past life, like I said, was of royalty, led a very superficial life with very little reflection on himself or meditation. And during this lifetime, he needs to broaden his awareness and seek knowledge on a more higher, more philosophical level. Aquarius is the new ager. This is the mindset thinks outside the box. It's radical change. Sometimes with Elon, he needs to talk less and listen more, because when he listens, he will learn. And that's just one of his challenges in this lifetime. Unfortunately, he's riding his tail and he's not living quite up to his dragon's head yet. But in time, I hope he will. I want to talk about Mars in Aquarius. Let me look at I'm scrolling for my notes. Bear with me. Mars and Aquarius does very well together because Mars and Aquarius is very eclectic. They have a highly developed intellect. Elon Musk is no dummy. Not a stupid man in any sense of the way. Incredibly intelligent, incredibly gifted. But the ego. Sometimes men operate on their ego, and that's their biggest downfall. And he's very good at thinking on his feet. He makes he's great to have around during an emergency because of the way he thinks on his feet. He's very independent. In a career, he's a hard worker, and he has a knack for coming up with ingenious ideas to improve efficiency and effectiveness. SpaceX, Tesla, makes sense. He's respected by his friends and loved ones, and he has a lot of loyalty within those circles. He does have the live and let live attitude. Even though I've seen him state some of his opinions, I think he tries to get involved in politics, but politics really isn't his stronghold. Now, please remember that when we're dealing with Mars, Mars has two things. Mars can either be the danger principle, meaning that wherever Mars is placed by house and sign is where the danger can come. Now, his danger here, because Mars is in the ninth in Aquarius, if he doesn't watch his cosmic biorhythm days, his lucky and unlucky days, he can't just go up in space any damn time he wants. There's a window of time every month for when you can and cannot do that. So that could be a danger for him. But also Mars is the desire principle and what Elon Musk desires in a partner. So his desire is pretty much a newer age woman. What I mean by that is his love partners are going to be different from society's norm. Oh God, what's that lady he's dating? Grimes. She's different, unique. He's highly eclectic himself, and he's fascinated by people who are extremely or unique or unusual. That's his attraction. But he has to have a mate that relates to him truthfully and allows him to have his own personal freedom. However, he needs to give that same courtesy to his partners. He does have a live and let live attitude, and he doesn't tolerate a jealous or possessive lover because of this placement, if that makes any sense. But that is the stars, a brief explanation of Elon Musk's stars. Let me just go through and make sure I covered everything. I have everything highlighted here. Oh, one more thing I do want to go over here. So his planets in aspect, one of the first things is he has Saturn opposing Neptune. And so when you have Saturn, the great malefic planet, opposing Neptune, Neptune can create illusions and delusions. even though he's quite ambitious, he can be extremely fearful of failure and therefore shy away from competition. I think with this whole Twitter thing, I do think he realized he screwed up. He probably shouldn't have signed any contracts at that time, but he's in it now and he's got to deal with it. Um, some people react to him with suspicion and distrust, and that can lead to conflicts. He doesn't understand the concept of friendly competition, and so that's one of his downfalls. But um, he has Pluto squaring ascendant, and I think this is where the ultimatum from Twitter. His relationships, he usually can make a strong impression on those he meets, whether it is positive or negative. His relationships are very intense and often plagued with power struggles. In order for him to improve his relationships with others, he should avoid trying to force others to do what he wants when he wants it. There has to be some compromise. Even if he is the big new boss on campus, there's going to have to be compromise, because how do I say this? A billionaire is only a billionaire because of the people around him. The people around him have pushed him to that level. He needs to learn how to deal openly and honestly with others, because a lot of people feel that his vibe is very manipulative. So this is one of his downfalls. Now, those are the stars of Elon Musk. Now, if I was Elon Musk's astrologer, I would tell him, I would guide him, because of his sun being in Cancer. He's got to think with his head more than his heart and his emotions. And sometimes he makes decisions based on that. How do I say this? He's not the most wretched soul in the world. Let's put it that way. He's an incredibly talented, incredibly intelligent individual. But because of certain placements in his stars, he becomes a workaholic. And people don't understand the Virgo moon energy of himself, where he's very critical, sarcastic of others. That's going to be his downfall. If he can learn to work around that, he'll be fine. The whole complexity of his chart is ruled by Mercury, and that makes complete sense. Okay. He's not the worst soul in the world. He's actually a great asset to mankind in some ways, with his knowledge of space and technology and innovation. Dragon's head in Aquarius is always going to bring that. Okay. Throw in an ascending in Gemini, which is another air sign, and that makes perfect sense why he creates cars, and he deals with space and Starlink and all of these companies. He just needs to get a pet, relax a little, meditate, not sleep in his office all the time, stop working 90, 100 hours a week, take time to smell the roses. And I know you don't get to billionaire status without hard work, but also you have to enjoy life a little too. Okay. Those are the stars of Elon Musk. If you have any questions on him, do not hesitate to ask me. And you guys have a great Sunday. Talk soon. Bye.